Seemingly all at once, new technologies emerged on many fronts. Breakthroughs in automation, energy, nanotech, biotech, computing, and neurotech technologies drove unprecedented changes. New technologies reshaped society as well as how individuals and organizations interacted. Promising technological applications emerged with such speed that most decision makers in business and politics were overwhelmed and even paralyzed by the sheer amount of opportunity, uncertainty, and choice. The shaping of society was quickly dominated by a new breed of large corporations designed to probe, explore, scale, and secure business concepts. The sustainability issues of old were quickly forgotten as there was an abundance of viable solutions. Instead, the issue is that there is no stable paradigm in sight, no shared basic understanding of the world and where we are heading.
So that could very well be a storytelling of what's happening between 2017 and 2030, seen from the perspective of 2030. My name is Marco Lucisano, and I'm Vice President of Papermaking and Packaging at RISE, and RISE stands for Research Institutes of Sweden. It's a rather new constellation, and it's the Swedish State Research Institute. My day job is to work with papermaking and packaging, and that's my education as well. And in case you wonder why the organizers invited a professional papermaker to talk about the future, the reason is that report up there, which we published last year. I like going to the theaters and I like going to performances. And there is something that I've noticed in Stockholm recently, namely that when we're here at the beginning of the performance, the organizers or the theater will come out with a voice saying, "You're very welcome to take photographs and recordings, provided that you share them on social media." Which is something new, at least to me. So you're very welcome to do that. And if you want to get in touch with me via social media, LinkedIn might be the very best way to do so. A Cellulose-Based Society was the name of the study that we published, and it's the base of what I'm going to talk about today. And a Cellulose-Based Society comes from an idea: what if cellulose, which happens to be the most abundant polymer or material substance used by nature, in nature, could be reinterpreted as one base for a circular bio-based economy? And what would it mean? And mind, I said one base. It's not the only base. We don't believe in a kind of material fixation. Now, since we live in the northern part of the world, this is possibly what we associate with cellulose, which of course is true, but this is also cellulose. What's this? Sugarcane bagasse. And this is cellulose, algae, and this is cellulose, eucalyptus plantation, and this is cellulose, cotton, and this is cellulose, rice fields, and this is cellulose, bamboo, and this is cellulose, bacteria, and this is cellulose. Possibly not the part that we eat and drink, but the rest, what's left. So we have quite a lot of cellulose in nature. Do you know how much we have? Any guesses? I can't even say how many zeros there are. There are 10 zeros after 10. It's a huge number of material. And to me, this is very difficult to understand. So if we say, okay, per second, how much cellulose is produced per second? It's 3,000 tons per second. And it literally grows on trees by itself. We don't need to do anything. So is this a lot or is it a little? If we want to say that we want to shift into a cellulose-based world, is this more or less than the amount of oil that we extract from the earth? It's a lot more. So we have plenty of cellulose on this planet. And that was the basic idea of our study. And if you want to talk about the future, two things that you very often see are studies that are either visions or forecasts. And I represent a research institution. We are researchers. So visions are good, and forecasts are for other kind of consultants. to us, looking about the future is more symbolized by this picture. And in case you say future and it's a foggy road, I would like to argue that this is actually a very good picture. Because if you learn how to drive your car in a foggy road, what you are actually doing is you are training yourself to recognize signals that are barely seeable and react on those. And by doing so, then you drive yourself safely home. And that's the whole exercise about the future. And if you still think that this is not a very positive picture, then I would like to remind everyone that the future is actually the only thing that has not happened yet. So it's something that we can work on. So what we tend to do, if we don't want to do forecasts and we don't want to do visions, is to define the space of what is technically and scientifically possible today and maybe 20 years down the road, and then look at global trends in society and see where these two parameters meet. Because where they meet, then you might find areas that are worth investigating. And this is what researchers do, regardless if you are in a university, in a research institute, or into a company. The way we have done it is by talking to a lot of people. And this is my colleague Tatiana. She is one of our sustainability experts. We have interviewed people by the hundreds, everywhere over the world, in academia, in the industry. We have interviewed consumers. We have interviewed non-governmental organizations, politicians, all around the world. And we've asked them what's top of mind, what's their biggest concerns, what are their hopes for the future, and how are they moving to navigate their way towards the future. And then, of course, we are not the only one thinking, so you can read a lot. You can read a lot digitally and still on the old gold medium paper. And when you have done all of this together, you get a lot of inputs, and you have to sort it out. You have to make sense out of it, which we do in internal and external settings, so that we try to find themes and things that are recurring. And when you have done that, we are still researchers, so we like numbers, and we need numbers to talk about what people are actually thinking today. And the good, or the great, the famous Hans Rosling said that you can't talk about the future if you don't understand today. So this is why we want to understand today. The way we did it is through an international consumer survey. We have asked 500 people in each country of our survey, and it's Sweden, Germany, the United States, Brazil, and China. And those people are urban citizens representing the middle classes, and they are selected so that the income distribution represents the income distribution in every specific country. So it's adjusted to the different countries. And just to point it out, since we are researchers, a lot of us, it's actually 500 people that completed the survey, not that started. This was a very heavy survey. We've asked a lot of questions about everything, and then we tried to summarize all of it. We have 400 pages of raw data, and now I'm going to go through every single one of those. Or maybe not. A summary. We are a worried kind. This is actually new in history. Earlier in history, we were worried for one specific thing. Today, we are worried about everything at the same time, but not quite to the same extent. So if I ask people how worried about environmental issues, this is the distribution. So above the horizontal line, you see the people that say that they are very worried about the environment, and below the horizontal line, the people that don't worry at all. And in between, you have the rest. You see anything? Good. Do you react on something? Do you want to make it even better? Next question. Do you care about the environment? Puff. Any Swedes here? Is this your impression of yourself compared to this or that? So why? I don't know, but there is one thing I would like to maybe claim could be behind this, is that if you live here or there, you see the problem. Remember that we've asked urban citizens in every country, if you happen to live downtown Stockholm or Gothenburg or Sundsvall, you don't see the problem. So you don't care. So if we do care, why do we care? And now it's a somewhat different scale. Above the horizontal lines are the people that care because of concerns for the world. Life in the sea, living creatures, animal, plants, poor parts of the world. Below, me, myself, my kids, my family, my environment. You see a trend? Same as before. The Western world, Sweden and Germany, care more about the rest of the world because we don't need to care about ourselves. We are safe. It's rather peculiar, and it's one of the driving forces that is going to influence how we think about the future. Who is responsible for the environment then? We've asked a lot of questions, and we've asked people to tell us if they trust a group and how much responsibility they ascribe to a specific group. And there is one point that stands out, and it's you and me as individual consumers. We don't believe in companies, governments, and all of it. It's about you and I. So how should we do it? Should we maybe work politically? Should we donate to charity? Or should we consume another way, or maybe the way we do? And the result is actually completely irrelevant which country it is. This is the result. So urban citizens representing the middle classes in our 5 countries believe that it's about you and me as individuals, and we should do it through the way we consume and live our lives. This is how to make the future a better place. But not quite the same way, because if we ask Swedes, we believe that we should buy locally produced goods and used products and recycle our household waste. While in the United States, you are keen about the sharing economy. And in China, you avoid chemicals and you don't travel by car. While in Germany, you don't travel by plane and you buy locally produced goods. And in Brazil, you reduce consumption and reuse products. So we are not the same across the globe in our 5 countries. But there is one thing that is common, and it is very interesting, to me at least, if we asked what's the single most important thing that could happen to make the world a better place, then everyone answers, give us more efficient recycling systems. Actually, the second most common is force company to recycle more. And this is one thing that is interesting to consider, because apparently the urban middle classes have a bias for recycling. And with bias, I don't mean anything that is negative. I mean that the first reaction is we should recycle more. So if we think about the future, we have to consider it. Now, I said that this was a study and an investigation about materials, and something we needed to know is in case our respondents care about materials at all. Because if they don't care, we can't ask them. Are they aware or are they not? And we did ask them. So we asked, if you consider the latest somewhat larger purchase that you have done, for example, a refrigerator, a bed, a sofa, did the materials it was made of influence your choice or not? And the answer is yes. At least to 50% in all countries, in some countries more. So our respondents are good respondents to talk materials with us. So we've asked a lot of questions about materials. If there is one thing I wouldn't have liked to do was to answer to my own questions, because it must have taken forever. We've asked people, is plastic more or less sexy than metal? Is wood more or less attractive than glass? And a lot of combinations. But then we have to summarize, and we did it by using 2 axes, a reliability score and an exclusivity score. Now, if you do that, you see that there are materials down here, plastics, that are not considered to be particularly reliable, nor particularly exclusive. And up there you have natural materials, and those are reliable and exclusive. But then we had to understand, where would the ideal material be? It would be here. So natural materials are, to us, exclusive enough, quite not as reliable as we might imagine them to be. Now, myself and a lot of people around the world are developing bio-based alternatives for the future. And we believe that it's a very good thing. I do. And if I ask consumers, how do they react? Where would they go? Any guesses? Up there or down here? Very close to oil. Is that the intention? Because if that's the intention, we have succeeded. If that was not the intention, we have not succeeded. And there is one thing that we see in our data. The gap is huge, but it's the fact that what is bio-based? We are talking a lot about bio-based, but what is bio-based? Is this bio-based? Is this bio-based? Or is that bio-based? We don't know, and we don't say. We know a lot of things about our respondents because we've asked a lot of questions, so we can actually pick out only those people that are more interested or more knowledgeable in sustainability. So we can single out them. If we only do that, then we go up here. So the difference between this point and that point is knowledge, education, information, and it's understanding. So this is the second conclusion from our study, something that I would like to leave with you. We really, really have to take responsibility for explaining, teaching, communicating, answering questions, and start all over again. Because if we want to develop something new and something that we believe is better, we have to make sure that the people that are going to use it understand that it is better. So far about today. Now the future. And the future is always more interesting. And at least there is something I would like to point out. Everything I'm going to say from here and to the rest, remember that it could very well be the other way around, because it has not happened yet. We asked, imagine a future in which resources from forests are used to create an array of products, everything from textiles and vehicle parts to cosmetics and prosthetics. This would lead to the forest becoming a more important resource in the production of materials and products for which we today use oil, plastic, glass, or metal. How would you react? Would you be essentially positive, in different degrees, committed to help, or maybe just curious, but essentially positive? Or would you be essentially negative, disappointed, or maybe all the way to protesting in public? We've asked our 2,500 respondents how they would react. Guesses? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs this way. Thumbs down. Carlo, you've heard me already? That's the answer. 50-50. And of course, it cannot be true. It's never 50-50. It's more like this. But still 50-50, essentially. The third point I want to leave with you. This is the distribution. A few things I want to comment. There are a lot of details, and I can comment on with you later. The very dark magenta down here, those are the people that would consider take to protesting in public, something that for obvious reason you don't quite do in China. But those are the people that were outside Östrand yesterday. There are not quite as many on the other side. So let us remind ourselves about it. There is another thing. When I'm taking the train to Stockholm tonight, and I'll get off the train at the central station, and I'm going to meet a lot of people, I can either say, wow, 50% of all of those people get it. I should be very happy. Or maybe I should say, Ash, 50% of those people do not get it, and I should be very worried. So how do you react to this one? And what we do together to shift it in the direction we need it to shift for the future. I asked people about the use of forests. And then if you are good at asking people things, you might start to think, did you make sure that they understood the same thing? You asked about forest. Are you sure that they listen, they hear the same thing? They know I'm not. I'm sure that they do not understand the same thing. So we have to check that as well. If I say forest, what do you understand? Because if you compare different realms of ideas, then you will answer in different ways. So I asked people, can you give me 3 words or 3 short sentences that describe your reaction when I say forest? Which country is this? Come on, guys, it's the audience participation part. Wake up. Sweden, why? Seems to be right, it feels right. Mushrooms, yes. I'm Italian, and if you see mushrooms, it has to be Sweden. Correct? Which country is this? Brazil? No. Germany? This one. This is the easiest one. China, why? Air, oxygen and air. Remember, we have asking people in cities, what do they not have in China? Air. This is the US. It's very similar to Germany, so you can actually... And this was another surprise, maybe not a significant one, but when we got the results from the computer, it said like this. This is Brazil. And life is this big because it was this often. So we had to call the embassy and say, does it make sense for you? And they said, yes. Full stop. So forest in Brazil equals life. The future, trends. Trends are things that are happening and are going to influence our movement from today towards the future. I'll start with an easy one, the city norm. And the city norm is about the fact that more and more of us are living in cities. And then someone could write an objection there. Why do you call it a trend? It's a fact. Yes, it is a fact. A fact with a lot of interesting implications. This being one. Why do I put Sweden and the city of New York on the same image? It's the same amount of people. Which of these two do you think is going to be the highest probability to implement things fast? Possibly. But there is another thing. As we become more and more urban, something that we do not lose is our need for nature. We do really need nature. And those of you that have been in Stockholm know where this image is taken from. It's Kungsträdgården in the spring, where everyone believes that cherry trees in Kungsträdgården is a picture of nature. And this is Sergels story, also in Stockholm, September last year. And that green thing you see on the floor is actually real grass, green grass. And the whole idea was that it was a company, they make houses, and they, quoting their words, wanted to make the people of Stockholm to feel nature under their bare feet. And if we start to believe that that is nature, then we have a problem. This is, to me, a better example of how to balance the need for nature with living in cities. This is Milan, the city where I was born, and this is Bosco Verticale. Bosco Verticale is a forest. It's built in the form of a house. And to me, it's one of the best pieces of modern architecture around. And it mirrors itself in Unicredit's big building. And I left this construction site on purpose on the image because what the city of Milan is building in there is they're digging to start a new park. And the park is going to be called the Library of Trees. So this is, to me, a very modern way to balance the need for nature with urbanization in a huge city. Moving forward, a very self-evident trend, no waste. We don't like waste, and if you just look around at what has been happening the past 5-6 months in Sweden with the rethinking on how we relate to plastic bags, it has gone so quickly. We take away more and more of our waste, which is good. Shift happens. What's this? If you're a company, what business are you in today, and what business will you be in tomorrow? That thing there is actually this thing here. It's noodles, and they're made of cellulose. So they have no calories, no taste, no smell, no nothing. They don't need to be cooked. You can just open the package and eat them. Taste nothing. When we released the report, we served this to our guests, and everyone was very happy. We had a cook to prepare them and make them tasty. But the second interesting thing about this product is they are produced by a company that used to produce viscose for clothes, and then realized that in making food for somewhat fat urban dwellers, you gain more money. Another one, no more plain Janes and average Joes. What's that about? It's about the fact that for urban middle classes, the interests are shifting. So in the middle, you have a lot of consumer power and a lot of interest. But we see that to the left and to the right, we are creating new areas of business, and those are viable. Why do I show a picture of jeans? Well, I told you at the beginning that I am a professional paper maker. I have a PhD in papermaking. Those jeans are made out of paper. 31% is paper. It's actually not viscose, it is paper. And it is these jeans. There are 449 pairs of these jeans, and I own 2. So there are 447 left. So for the paper makers in the audience, go and buy one if you have a very thick wallet. And it's not about commenting on my own wallet, it's about commenting on the fact that you can do niche products that are very specific to a very specific interest group and make them work. This is Japanese paper, it's weaved in Italy, and it's designed in Sweden to make things easier. Business activism. Business activism is about companies that decide to move faster than they have to, out of their own will. And now I would like to point out that I'm very sure that all companies are in the business of making money. So when they move faster than they have to, they do so because they believe it is a viable strategy to make money for the future. There are plenty of examples here, and I would just like to mention one, and it's the famous computer company Apple. And maybe not quite the same example that everyone mentions. What did Apple patent on September the 15th, 2016, so last year? What was published in the United States? Yeah? With a name that is very Apple-ish, they published a patent called a bag. Apple patented a paper bag. Not only a paper bag, a white paper bag. Why does Apple patent a paper bag? It's beautiful, it's fantastic design, but it's made entirely in paper. If you want to touch it, in case you haven't seen it, it's here at the break. It is a fascinating thing, but why does Apple develop and patent their own paper bags? Why can't they buy paper bags on the market? Possibly because they want to move faster than everyone else. Maybe, I don't know. Now this is about trends, and trends are things that you can from today describe towards the future and be somewhat sure that they are going to work that way. But then there are uncertainties, and uncertainties are, of course, uncertain. You can't tell. There might be black swans, and there might be things happening that you can't predict. And if they do happen, they change the course of history. So we had to consider those as well, and this is one. And I'm not talking about oil in sense of are we going to have oil, but mainly are we going to use oil? Will we care about oil, or will we decide not to use oil? This is another uncertainty. We have the agreement. Is it going to work? And the more we listen to the President of the United States, the more we might ask ourselves, is it going to work? This is another uncertainty. From here and 15 years down the road, are we going to live in a period of peace or war? Economy. New ideas and the industrial environment symbolized by the city of San Francisco. Are we going to have a steady flow of innovations or not? We can't say. There is not a single person on the planet that is going to promise you and be accountable for how it's going to work out 15 years down the road. So there have to be uncertainties. And when you have trends, uncertainties, and you know about today, then you can start describing scenarios for tomorrow. And one of the scenarios we heard at the beginning, read by a colleague of mine. And the basic idea about scenarios is to describe a picture, a word, and then try to figure out how would you live in that word and how did you get there. And the basic assumption of our scenarios is that we are in a world that really, really wants to solve its sustainability problems. But since the world around us is going to be very different in our different scenarios, the path to do it so is going to be very different. So in the first scenarios, the technological renaissance, it was a scenario where everything was possible. So all of the innovation and all of the ideas that you in universities and companies are developing is becoming true at the same time. So how do you invest? How do you find the proper choice towards the future if you have 25 working alternatives instead of only having one? How does that work? And this is another scenario, the fragmented world. And the fragmented world is the same basic idea. We really want to solve our sustainability issues towards the future, but every supranational structure that we have today is not working in 2030. So the United Nations are not working, the European Union is not working, the treatment for commerce around the world does not work. So how do we react if we still want to solve our sustainability issue for the future? And as you see and hear, I'm not giving you answers. There are no answers. I'm only trying to help you paint a picture and live yourself inside the picture. Now I would like to back off from the future and back today, 2017, with a direction towards the future. And I would like to round off my time on the stage talking about opportunities, and someone might even say missed opportunities. You remember this one? We talked about the city norm, and we talked about this one, no waste. Something that happens in cities, and it's happening in Stockholm, is this. We urban people do not want to cook anymore. So we take out our phone, we don't call anyone, of course, we take out our app, and we order food. And for the sake of science, I've ordered a lot of food. I'm responsible for packaging as well, so I have to study applied packaging science. And then you eat your food, and this is what's left. And since I'm a material scientist, I can notice that the lid is 80% recycled material. Don't know which material. Sorry, wrong direction. The little sauce thingy is PLA, polylactic acid, which I believe to most consumers is plastic. Putting into plastic recycling doesn't work. We have a fork and a knife in unknown plastic. We have a ball in molded pulp. We have a drink in aluminum, and we have paper. What am I supposed to do with that? Why isn't there a better solution? Am I really supposed to do this? This is outside my thing. And I knew that we were coming to a cinema. This is a cinema in Stockholm. Is this really the very best thing we can do today in Stockholm? Couldn't there possibly anything better than this? Are you happy with it? Should we work to make it better? Do you know what this is? The guy is a famous British cook. He has a TV program. It's called War on Waste. And every maybe second month there is an issue on BBC. And this was about this issue, coffee cups. 4.5 billion coffee cups are used in the UK alone every year. 4.5 billion coffee cups. It's fascinating. And all of those are recyclable. Are they recycled? Statistics say less than 1%, and I don't believe it. It's too much. It's way lower, if I had to guess. Are we happy about it? Or can we find a solution where we, for real, can stand tall and say we are producing goods that are making value in society, and then they are recycled by 100%? Why don't we move in that direction? It should be possible. And then there is a question about image, and sometimes reality is better than you might imagine, what happened yesterday at Östrand. But since we work with this raw material, a lot of us feel very good, at least in my business, the business of papermaking. And we really have reasons to do that. Do you know this guy? Know who he is? Do you read all of his letters? I don't. But I read one, this letter. If you are a pope, you write encyclical letters. They are somewhat churchy texts. And this one is called Laudato Si by the Holy Father Francis on care for our common home. So this is not a churchy document, it's about the environment, which is rather peculiar to be a pope. On paragraph 20, the Pope writes, each year hundreds of millions of tons of waste are generated, much of it non-biodegradable, highly toxic and radioactive, from homes and businesses, from construction and demolition sites, from clinical, electronic, and industrial sources, etc., etc. The letter is this thick. The Pope mentions one material only, being paper. To cite one example, most of the paper we produce is thrown away and not recycled, full stop. And of course, the Pope has a better connection to the solution, so he might have other sources of statistics that the one I have, but to me it takes 20 seconds to find that the global paper recycling rate, which is debatable, is 58%, and in some countries, including this one, way higher than 75%. So how did the Pope find these numbers? And why hasn't the paper or forest industry corrected the Pope? Because that has not happened. But of course, it's an old guy in Rome. Who cares? No one. Do you know what the circular economy is? The circular economy is a new way of thinking. It is a very interesting innovation in meaning, where you say that instead of taking things from nature, using them and throw them away, you try to keep value as long as possible. So all materials are foodstuff for the next step, and it just circulates. It never becomes waste. It's a fascinating concept that is pervading the entire Europe, society, and economics and businesses alike. And it feels very good if you are in the papermaking or the forest industry or in the bio-based industry. Because this going around feels very much like us. So we should be happy. And this is, if I manage to make it work. Sorry, nope.
So basically circular is better. It would mean less of this, and ultimately less of this. Which means, I guess, less of this.
Look up!
Oh yeah! Circular thinking. It changed the world once before. It can change the world once again.
This is essentially official advertisement for circular economy. Why do they put oil platforms and the forest industry next to each other? And why are we not saying anything about it? Why are we not working to disprove it or to prove it, if that is the case? This is the motto of the organization I represent. Let's put our head together to keep ahead. So when we did this study, we said, okay, we have to push out this information, those conclusions. How do we do it? And how do we remain true to what we believe? And one thing we said is, how do we distribute the results? Should we publish them? Should we print them? Should we print them what? We talked about the demonstration economy, and demonstration economy is the very last concept I want to leave with you, and it's about standing for what you believe and daring to take a chance and to make something different. And when doing it, be perfectly transparent on what you do and why you do it, what you do know and what you do not know. So we looked around the discussion. We had quite a lot of data, and I said, let's pick one area where we could make something a little bit different and see if it actually gets better. And one thing that is discussed a lot today in Scandinavia is what happens with the waste for our textiles. And this is jeans, but it doesn't need to be jeans. We produce a lot of textile waste, and very little of that is made to keep its value and reused. We happen to have a paper machine on site. It's outside my window. So it's a very good asset if you want to try making new things in papermaking. And we actually didn't make new things. We went back 200 years in history and made paper like it was made 200 years ago, so with old textiles. The only thing we didn't know if a modern paper machine would be able to make paper with textiles today, 200 years later. And the thing worked. So we could produce paper, and eventually we could print a report on paper. And that is also another choice we made. The report is called A Cellulose-Based Society, and of course it exists on a cellulose-based medium only, so you can ask me for a PDF, you're not going to get it. If you ask me for that in paper form, you are going to get it, and that for free. So you are very welcome to leave me your business card in the break, and I'm going to send you one. So you can make it. But the only fact that you can technically produce it doesn't mean that it's smart or good for the environment. We don't know. So we said we had to see if this is correct. So we had to build up a complete study of what happens when you interlink the paper side of the business. Where are you? No. On the right-hand side, anyhow. And the textile cycles. And then we have to calculate what happens when you move material from one to the other. And we have to make experiments to see if this is recyclable. And what happens when you recycle it in the next level. And to evaluate all of it. And to make mass balances around all different areas. And when you've done that, it turns out that you very well can make it valuable. So it is technically possible and possibly sound as of application, which is the way we want to do. That is what we mean by the demonstration economy. So we believe that the companies, organizations, innovators that are going to be successful towards the future in the pursuit of more sustainable solutions for a sustainable world are those that are going to dare to take a chance, to be very open in what they're doing, to be very transparent, telling what they do know and what they do not know, and what they hope to learn by taking the next step, and do that in a very open way. So that's a cellulose-based society, and as I said, if you want a copy of the report, you're very welcome to stop me in one of the breaks. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was a super interesting talk you made. I didn't know half of it, but of course, I'm not a professor.
Me neither.
No, you're a doctor.
I am a doctor.
Yeah. So,
in something else.
Yeah. We have a lot of questions. Do you see any particular one that you want to answer? Will we make it? You never answered that one. Max 2 degrees to Paris Agreement.
One of the basic principles of my business is never to give an answer. So I won't say. Is it a tough journey to make it? Terribly tough. Are we on the right path? Can't say. Is it plain impossible? Wouldn't say that. But it's about choices, and this is the old thing about our work and about how we want to interact with civil society, with academia, with companies. It's about choices. Do you believe in it? Then you can make it happen. It's certainly possible and terribly tough.
Yes. Another question is, how did you choose these 5 particular countries?
Well, we chose like this. We had to take Sweden. It felt logic. We are a Swedish organization. But Sweden is not the best example of average European nation. So we wanted to add a larger country, and then it became Germany. We would have liked to have maybe something from the south of Europe, but we didn't quite got there. The United States is important because this study was done running up to the election last year. So we really wanted to have their point of view. China is a terribly interesting country, of course, because of its sheer size, but also because things are more complicated and at the same time more easy in such a huge thing, a huge country. If they take a decision and they implement it, the results are very large. And if Sweden takes a decision and implements it on a global scale, the results are not that large. And then Brazil is interesting to the paper-making business. And of course, we wanted to have one country representing the parts of the world where you cannot be sure that forest is equal with good forestry. Mm-hmm. So this is why we chose these 5 countries.
But what about the Swedish brand? Could that mean something for the rest of the world in terms of recycling? Because I know a lot of countries are looking at us as a country that is kind of moving forward in a lot of questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you heard, I have described a couple of cases where I really believe that we could do more. And because of the fact that we have the infrastructure, we have a population that is keen on doing the right thing, we are technologically savvy, we like to try new ways to do things. So why are we not trying? We should be the ones that make it faster.
Yeah.
So a very good point. If we manage to aggregate our common interests towards the future, we should be a very good brand for development.
And you have really inspired us to do that today. And make sure that you spread the word, okay? One thing that... let's take another question. Yep. Yeah, you choose this time. The last question, maybe? No?
Do I want to see green buildings like the one I showed from Milan in cities like in Sweden? No. Because that building is designed to be in Milan. Do I want to see solutions that are designed to be here? Yes. That building is luxury apartments. It's one of its kind. It's a miracle of architecture. It's a fantastic ecosystem. If you ever have a chance to go and visit Milan, do go there and see how it works, because it's a miracle of applied design. But the thing we really want to see is not one show-off building in one somewhat high-income city. We need to be moving those concepts to widespread applications so that they make sense on a global scale. And here you have a lot of things that you can consider. You have green roofs, you have other ways of cooling and heating houses, you have everything that is done in the north of Europe about zero energy or even active energy-producing houses. So there are a lot of things that don't need to be that fancy and that designed, but could even have a much wider impact for every single geographical location.
When I saw that, I've seen that picture before, that building before, on Facebook actually, speaking about social media. I thought it was that it was Photoshop, basically. Before actually, I was really intrigued and I Googled it and I saw it was real. But I've also seen these bridges for animals over highways. Are those real?
Those are for real.
They are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They are for real.
Yeah.
Of course they are for real.
Yeah. Which country?
Here.
Do you remember? Here in Sweden?
Yeah, as well.
Did you know that? Okay. Yeah, you're the experts, researchers. Sorry for the stupid questions. Okay, so besides junk and garbage, you have another speciality that you're passionate about. We spoke on the phone the other day, and that is spinning.
Yeah.
You
do you want me to talk about that as well?
No, but I thought it was an interesting fact. Everybody has a hobby, and you're actually a spinning instructor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that in the breaks, that's good enough.
I'm not going to make any commercial on what gym that you're working for. One more question.
Yes.
Did you fall off a bike?
Never.
Okay. Thank you
Not
so
yet.
much, Marco.
Thank you very much. Thank you.